Well, hi there everyone and welcome. Thanks for stopping by my channel. Today's recipe is for another meal in a jar. This one is for a quiche and I'm going to call it an Easter pie. It's really kind of like a quiche Lorraine recipe with a lot of just simple ingredients, eggs, cheese, a little bit of bacon, and some green onions. I'm going to be using a half recipe of my new Just Add Water pie crust mix. It is such a great mix. That'll be our crust, our base for the quiche. And then a good bit of the Anthony's heavy cream powder to make this quiche very luxurious. And then some of the shelf-stable bacon bits, as well as some seasonings. And it is fantastic. Y'all are going to love this one. Let me show you how I put it together. I'm starting with a 24-ounce jar. Of course, you could use a quart-sized jar if that's what you have. And I'm just putting the same amount of cheese as eggs in the bottom of this jar. I've got 2 tablespoons of the green onions that are going to go in there. And I'm using just some simple seasonings. Dry mustard is really good paired with anything with cheese in it. And then a pinch of cayenne, a pinch of nutmeg. And I suggest you go light on the salt just because the bacon's kind of salty, the cheese is kind of salty. Now I do like to keep my heavy cream powder separate just because I've found in working with this stuff that I like to combine it with water and blend it as to ensure that there are no lumps. So that's why I have kept that in a baggie. And this is what you would keep on your pantry shelf. And that pie crust mix is good for 3 or 4 months, something like that, on the pantry shelf. And then be sure to check the expiration date on your bacon bits, as well as your heavy cream. Just, kind of be aware of expiration dates. When you're ready to prepare this, you're just going to get out kind of a medium-sized bowl and be sure to preheat your oven to 400. Now, like I said, this is a half recipe. It's just enough for 1 pie crust, not the 2 pie crust recipe I gave y'all before. This is just for 1 crust. And the amount of ice water you add kind of depends on the weather a little bit and evidently elevation, I have learned. So here in South Texas, we're pretty close to sea level and we're pretty humid. But I like to add, for half a recipe, I like to add about 3.5 tablespoons of water. At least I did this day. I started with 2.5 and then I added another tablespoon. And the reason was there were just some crumbs in the bottom of that bowl that really weren't mixing in very easily. They weren't incorporating with the rest of it. And I thought, yeah, it needs a little bit more water. So I added 1 more tablespoon and then it just seemed like things were kind of combining better. The little crumbs at the bottom, they're mixing in, they're adhering to that ball, and that's what you're looking for. So yes, your hands are going to get messy on this one, but it's so worth it. This is a fantastic pie crust recipe. And I'll be sure to link my pie crust recipe video down in the description box below, and it'll have really good detailed instructions for you. And I like to flour my surface, flour my dough, and flour my rolling pin, just so nothing is sticking. I kind of wanted to make sure all of the surface had some flour on it, and then I flattened it into a little disc, and then I just started rolling it out. And you just want to roll it out to be the size of whatever pie plate you're going to put it in. For me, I'm using my grandmother's pie plate. I inherited that from her, and it's so special to me. My grandmother, this is my dad's mom. She was just famous for her pies. I mean, famous as in our family loved her pies. She's the one that would make those apricot fried pies that weren't fried. Oh, so good. Whenever we would go to visit them, she would have multiple pies for us. She would also fry chicken. And we always thought her fried chicken was the best in the world. And I still believe it's true. She had the best fried chicken and the best pies. All right, see how wonderful that pie crust is? It's not fussy. It's really easy to work with. So I'm just putting it in the pie plate there. And if you'll notice, like one little side of that pie crust is not quite as high as it needed to be. And I regretted that later because I couldn't fill it all the way to the top. But yeah, if you can, make sure that pie crust fits all the way up to the top of the sides. And here I am trying to be fancy and crimp the edges, but I was so bad at it, y'all. I had to fast forward that. You would definitely laugh at me. All right, so poke some holes in the bottom so it doesn't poof up on you too much. And then just blind bake that for about 10 or 12 minutes, just until it's lightly golden brown. And while that's baking, you can start your filling. I like to start with the heavy cream powder and go ahead and mix it up. So what I did, remember that's 1 cup of heavy cream powder, and in that blender cup, that's 1 cup of water. And we're just gonna turn this into heavy cream. So empty that little baggie of powder into your blender cup and just give that a good blend, and that way you'll make sure there's no lumps. Okay, and then I just set that to the side, and into a large bowl, I emptied the egg and cheese mixture and added 1 1/4 cups of water. That amount of water should be perfect to rehydrate those eggs, the cheese, and the onions. And then you just go ahead and add the heavy cream. Of course, you could add other vegetables to this, like spinach or broccoli, but I'm keeping it pretty simple. All right, now let's saute that bacon. I like to put a little bit of butter in that pan. And then my oven timer went off and my crust was ready. Reduce your oven temperature down to 325. Your quiche is going to bake at a lower temperature than your crust did. And when your butter has melted, you can go ahead and add the bacon. You can add as many packages as you want. That's 2 packages of that bacon. And I like to saute it until it gets really foamy and very crispy. And then I cooled it for a little bit, and you definitely want to get rid of that excess grease, and I just used that paper towel method there. And after the bacon has cooled just a little bit, just a couple minutes, I added it to the egg mixture. And that is your filling for your quiche. All right, so I went ahead and put the crust on a baking sheet just to make it a little bit easier to get in and out of the oven. I decided to use a measuring cup to put that filling in kind of gently because that little bit of crust, that it just wasn't quite high enough on the side. I didn't want the filling to spill over and cause problems in the oven, so I just gently ladled in that filling. I had a little bit of extra, and I'll show you in a minute what I did with it. And you'll bake it for somewhere between 50 and 60 minutes, just until the middle is not jiggly. I had some extra filling, and I baked it just in a little ramekin, and it baked for probably 40 or 45 minutes. And it's wonderful. Don't waste any extra filling. Go ahead and bake that up. That's just like a crustless quiche, and it's so tasty. So here's our quiche when it comes out of the oven. It has a nice poof to it. It will sink as it cools, but it's just such a lovely egg dish. See how the green onions kind of floated to the top? You can see flecks of bacon there, and of course that cheese browned up really nicely. I just thought it was beautiful. I let it cool for probably 15 minutes while I visited with my daughter. And then when it's time to plate up, you can just get a knife and cut that into wedges. We got 8 wedges, but of course you could do 6 or even 4 giant wedges. That would be a really large serving. But here's our quiche Lorraine. Isn't that lovely? It's so beautiful. And y'all, it tastes amazing. The egg custard part is really nice and creamy. I love the green onions in there. I think it would be delicious even without the bacon. You could definitely use our sausage crumbles instead if you don't want to use the bacon. If you like quiche, I think you're going to like this one. It's sliced up beautifully and it cuts easily. And y'all, that crust. It's so good in that crust. I'm just a huge fan of the crust now. I fall more in love with it every time I make it. But see how nice this is? I think it would be wonderful, even for company. Okay, let's talk about the crust for a minute. Look at those flaky layers. Oh, I'm telling y'all, that's a really good recipe. I hope you try it. All right, guys, thanks for watching. As always, I will include the full recipe down in the description box below, as well as my shopping link. I'm an independent consultant with Thrive Life, and that just means if you shop through my link, I'll get a small commission on your purchase at no additional charge to you. And thank you for liking and subscribing, and thank you so much for the comments. It really does help my channel. I'm thinking about Easter, and I'm just so thankful. Easter is probably my favorite holiday, just so meaningful. I pray the Lord's blessings on you, and I just hope you'll have a fantastic week. And until next time, y'all take care and keep thriving.